But the community fought hard. The community fought hard. The community fought hard of African American people to have this place be beautified. Okay? And there's a lot of activity going on, so it's really interesting. Of all the building that is happening, because there was no building happening for many, many years.
People are moving back?
People are moving back, someone asked. No. New people are coming in. I don't know that we really understand migratory patterns of human beings under oppressive conditions. So Oklahoma, under legal segregation, had separate systems, of course, for education. So if you were a brilliant high school student like Dr. John Hope Franklin and others, graduating in the 30s, you had to leave the state of Oklahoma to go to college. Even though there was Langston University, historically black college and university in Langston, Oklahoma. Very fine institution.
Yay.
That's an A&M college. We have a grad up here.
So you had the brand back here.
Okay, that's right.
Yes.
That's right. You got two Langston. That's right. So, 4-year college, very fine institution, A&M, agricultural and mechanical. But if you wanted to further your education and possibly study something different other than agriculture and mechanical.
And normal.
And normal, yes. And what does normal mean?
Huh? For
Norm-
teacher. It's a that means it was a school for teachers.
That's right.
You could, yeah.
That's right. For
But
black
if you wanted
teachers.
to get a major in philosophy.
That's right. The humanities.
Right.
Yeah. So you had to leave the state of Oklahoma because you could not, a black teacher could not teach in a mixed classroom, and a white teacher could not teach black children. If they did, they would be fined up to $50 a day and in prison. Yes. And so what that causes to have happen is your youth starts to leave the community, right?
Yeah.
And if you're really in a place that is so deplorable that it burns down your homes and your businesses and then restricts you, when you get to a place that you can kind of practice your humanity more so and be challenged and be rewarded for just contributing, you stay. So you don't move back. Dr. Franklin did not move back to Tulsa, right? He stays away. Many people, once you get out, you leave. So that's what happens to our youth. So if we look at what's happening now with younger people trying to come back into places where there are jobs and opportunity, what happens to the place that they have to leave? Right? So we have to think about that. Why? I don't want to leave from home. I mean, I'm from Oklahoma. My family is buried here. That's hard to leave. Why? Why? Because you don't hold the memory when you go to a new place. You're not going to be able to say, but what about my grandma's place over there trying to tear down? Right? That's right. How does a city grow? How does a city build itself? Yeah. There's a strategy to this, to trying to constantly keep us discombobulated. This is the second site of the Booker T. Washington High School.
Stacey Adams.
Oh, Stacey Abrams, yeah. She spoke in the field house. The field house is named the Nate E. Harris Field House. Yeah. Nate Harris is my husband's cousin, and he's the winningest coach in the state of Oklahoma. African American. He had to fight every tooth and nail.
Booker T.
Yep. He was a Booker T graduate, and then he came back and was able to coach. But what happens if he doesn't have opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Let's pull up a little bit more in front of this school. Okay, so this is the school that was built in the 50s, right? E.W. Woods, who was the principal of Booker T. Washington High School for 30 years, he's responsible for raising the funds to get this school built. So he was considered like the mayor of the African American community, also the African American superintendent, school superintendent. The separate system, it's painful when you look at it. It's painful. He could have been the superintendent for the whole entire school district because of his scholarship and his push for education and the significance and the importance of it. You raise up the whole state of Oklahoma, right? The whole state of Oklahoma's educational understanding and system that it has was built on a black man named E.W. Woods. It doesn't get the credit. Yeah.
Did the state contribute any money for this school, or?
Well, it's still a state school. It's a, it's a public school. Yeah.
But they did finally do something.
Did they?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Did they? E.W. Woods had to raise the funds to get this school built. Right. Right. That's what that means, right? Right. We keep imagining my wonderful history teacher from the University of Tulsa. I had questions like that and would just berate him with question after question about why, because of my native ancestry. And he finally sat me down and said, I want you to understand this, try to take this in. It's always about the land. It's always about the land. It's always about the land. He said, it never matters the people. It's always about the land. So when you see strife and struggle, look at the land. And so when he told me that, it really made me look at the systems and places that are in place to kind of keep us grappling with, as though we are against each other and we're trying to survive. Because we all have to have the same water. We all have to have the same air. And this other thing that's created is just a constant thing, that busyness that keeps us frustrated. And so we never get to fully benefit from all the talents that are there and available to us. We never get to fully benefit. The Tulsa Public Schools decided that it needed to build another building, modernize. How do we preserve African American spaces and places? Do we hold any value to them? The community fought tooth and nail to save the original structure of the school. This is the only part it was able to save, because when desegregation happened, they came in and they would throw out trophies, records of the African American students, pictures, images, right? When they built the new school down there were no images of the African American, the princesses, like we saw the young ladies.
Yeah.
You know, every school has a princess and queen and football, all that. Okay, so when desegregation happens, there is a level of violence against black teachers, black students, and black schools. So if you're not from Tulsa or wherever you're from, wherever you grew up, where was the Booker T. Washington School in your community? Where was the Dunbar School? Where was the Phyllis Wheatley School?
That's it. Kansas City, that's it.
Right. That meant that was where the black community was.
Wendell Phillips.
Right. Yeah, that's what that means. That's painful that African American people don't have that imagery of where they live. Because preservation was created to uphold buildings that were built by powerful, rich white men. That's just the truth of it. And so when people are saying things about their community and their buildings and their places, and by the way, who were the workers sometimes that built those great big buildings?
The same ones that built the White House?
Right. Right. There's never any acknowledgement of the actual workers, whoever they are. Why is that? Why does that have to be the constant thing that people are fighting for? I mean, because you're missing out on the architects. You're missing out on the people that do the planning and the business. Because who ran the plantation?
Alright.
We've been taught that there was an overseer. We've been taught that there was like a master up in the big house. Community consists of people, right? Worker bees. That's who forms the community. That's who holds it together. Who ran the plantations, really? Can you run something if you don't know how it works? Right? We have to look at that history we've been given and really see, how do you think people were successful when they came into cities if they didn't know how to do something already that they had already done before and been doing it over and over and over again 400 years. It's not a surprise that you have many settlements that were successful until violence came against them and ran them off their land. How do black people have towns in Oklahoma? Those people came with those tribes. Land was given to them when the United States government was trying to break up the tribe's sovereignty, called allotments, under treaty agreements. And so some of those people, because the tribes practiced the institution of slavery, some of those people in the tribes that also, because of the institution of slavery, something else that is practiced is agency over women's bodies.
Come on
And
with
so
it.
agency over women's bodies means that any man that has sex with that woman is going to produce a child. Right? That woman can produce a child. And so you can both own your child outright through that institution, right? That's the dirty business of it. You can own your own child. You can sell your child. That's the dirty business of it. But because tribes are considered nations, and nations went under treaty agreements, you only have treaty agreements with another nation, nation to nation. And so because of that, when the United States government decides to break up the tribes by way of splicing that land up, giving away 40, 80, 160 acres of land to each individual member of a family, then black people, because you've now considered people of Negro ancestry a particular thing, and so they also get to have land too because of that tribal connection, not necessarily because of the blood tie, because then you have to prove, right? How does that work? Does anybody have to have a blood tie to be proven to be American? I thought it was a test you take and you get citizenship. Right. But for tribal citizenship existence, it has to be a blood tie. That's interesting. Very interesting. It's very painful in families. Very painful. Because you have people grappling with, I have some Native American ancestry, but then you can't prove not much. All you need is a little bit to have a grandmother. You just need a little bit to have a grandmother. This one person had to do something, and you have a great, 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 great grandmother. That's all you need. But when you have people that are trying to break you up and tell you, no, there's a difference here. They're breaking up families.
Yep.
That's what that is. That's a breakup of a family. So Indian removal was a violent act.
Yes, it was.
But out of that, when you get black people here and they began to have towns, because Indian people were practicing this institution of slavery,
Yep.
and they built little towns for their people that they enslaved. So they had separate towns within the nation, those settlements. It just wasn't this violence against them. As you have white settlement begin to come into Indian territory is when you get the violence. So is a riot really whites' violence instead of it being black and white people fighting? Because I thought when you rioted, you were rioting against power structures. How can people who have no rights be in your way? And so we have language like race riot. Marrying the word race with riot as though black people are in relationship with the violence that's perpetrated against them.
Yeah.
And then we change it to race massacre as though we know we're talking about the black people because we've said race. When we say massacre, generally, to me, I've always understood massacre to be when a lot of people were killed because I knew those people that were killed were Native people.
Right.
Because that's how I've always heard it. But then we coupled it with race, and I know race always is coupled with riot, which means black and white people are fighting. And if you're only talking about black and white people all the time, you never get to actually talk about the other groups of people that also have to deal with the same thing. And so they are left out. The trickery of it all. Booker T. Washington High School. It has a beautiful relief on top. And this is a beloved site. So as the community moves out here, oh, and by the way, this is the more affluent community. Doctors live out here. The teachers lived out here in this area as the community had to move north. Right. Lived out here. And black people had to have those homes built. So when we talk about gentrification, and generally we know that to be where white people have lived and then black people have come into the community and then white people are coming back into the community, right? Is it still gentrification if the community was originally black and now the white people are trying to come back in and we've only been looking at it through the lens of whiteness and how we understand that kind of population and how your neighborhoods look and are built? Everything is not white. Okay, so we can go on. We're going out to Oaklawn.
Wow,